Hi there, kayakers. Today I'd like to show you my project, which is mounting an electric trolling motor on my kayak. The kayak for this project is an Ocean Kayak, and the model is the Prowler 13T Angler. And the motor that I'm going to be working with is a used Minn Kota Endura 29-pound thrust motor. I got this off of Craigslist for about $50 used. I had two goals in mind for this project. The first was to mount the motor on the stern of the kayak rather than on the side. And the second was to have hands-free steering so I could operate the speed control and operate and handle fishing rods and tackle while I was on the go. With these goals in mind, here's how the project was completed, starting with how to mount the motor on the stern of the boat. The Prowler 13 comes with some molded-in brass fittings on the end and the top of the kayak, and that enables owners to install an optional rudder kit, like we see in the photo here. Now, I knew that I was not going to install a rudder on this particular kayak, and you cannot use a real heavy bolt with these fittings. And I saw that a couple of these were already stripped out. They are brass. That's a real fine thread. So what I decided to do was drill those fittings out and replace them with these rubber well nuts. The thickness of the hull on this area of the boat is fairly substantial. I estimate it to be at least a ½ inch thick, maybe more. After the brass fittings have been drilled out, we're left with some nice clean holes to work with. Take the rubber well nuts and install them with some silicone adhesive. Here in these photos we see the well nuts installed on the end of the boat and the two on the top. You'll notice the two that are on the top of the hull also have a couple of aluminum spacers installed. The 6 attachment points that we just created with the well nuts secure this L-shaped platform that I made out of oak. The two pieces were dovetailed together for strength and assembled with waterproof Gorilla Glue. Gorilla Glue is available in any hardware store. The platform was then finished with some spar polyurethane and some black paint. In this photo you can see why the aluminum spacers are necessary. And you can also see a shallow wedge installed on the vertical surface of the platform. This was necessary as the stern of the kayak angles towards the front of the kayak as it moves towards the waterline. The next step was to adapt the transom bracket to work with the platform. This was easy to do by cutting off the attachment arms as shown in this photo. This leaves us with an L-shaped bracket to match the platform. The nice thing about using the transom bracket is that you don't need to construct anything else to make this work, and you also retain the ability to set the motor height and the trim. I then drilled one hole through the top of the bracket so that a thumb screw can pass through the bracket and the platform. The platform has a threaded T-nut installed on the underside. This makes for a secure mount and also makes it easy to attach and detach the motor whenever you like. The next step was to modify the trolling motor, which requires disassembly of the head unit, the tiller, and the speed control switch. Make sure there's no power to the unit when you do this to avoid an electrical shock. Remove the screws on the underside of the head unit and the top cover can be removed. This will allow you to remove the tiller and the speed control switch. Make note of the wire and the switch connections for future reference. The bottom half of the cover can also be removed. You should now have the bare shaft with just the wires running through it. You'll have to decide, depending on your setup, whether to retain the stock length or to shorten the shaft. The shaft on most motors is composite and it cuts easily with a hacksaw blade. If you do shorten it, take care not to damage the wires. I cut about 10 inches off of this shaft and then fitted a standard PVC plumbing elbow to the shaft as shown here. It was painted to match, and the opening was sealed with silicone and shrink tubing after running the wires through it. Splice in enough wire to reach the cockpit of the kayak. The wires will go to a control box with the speed control switch. The control box is a standard PVC outdoor rated electrical box. Drill a hole to install a coupling like this one. Then install the speed control switch into the cover as shown. Run the wires to the box and seal around the wires with silicone and shrink tubing. Connect the wires to the switch using the switch labels and your notes that you took during disassembly. Here's the finished control box with some automotive wire loom installed between the box and the motor. I also added a couple of loops in the loom to clip it to attachment points on the kayak. This help keeps the loom in place and out of the water. Here's a photo of the progress so far. Next is the steering setup. Here's a photo of the steering arms on the motor shaft. All of the parts are simple hardware: eye bolts, spacers, and clamps. From the steering arms, I ran parachute cord to the cockpit of the kayak where it connects to the stock foot braces. The stock foot braces are adjustable using the push tab seen here. To make the foot braces slide freely in the track, I removed the locking tab. This is done by removing the track and sliding the foot brace out. The locking tab can then be easily removed. Reinstall the foot brace and track. I made some web straps with sewn-in loops and a buckle. This provides attachment points and adjustability. The ends of the cord have an overhand knot. The end goes through another overhand knot, which forms the loops you see at the ends of the web straps. It's simple, secure, and easy to remove. The battery for the motor will sit in the well behind the seat. Thanks for checking out my video. I hope it gives you some ideas for mounting an electric trolling motor to your own kayak.